Today, well, we're going into something pretty profound. It's one of those ancient, huge questions. What actually happens when we die? I mean, is it just nothing? Or maybe everything? Or something else entirely, something we can't even wrap our heads around? It feels like a conversation everyone thinks about, but, we often kind of avoid it.
It really is the ultimate unknown, isn't it? And how we try to understand it, well, that says so much about how we understand life itself.
Okay, so let's start there. When we talk about death, it feels like one single thing.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's more complex. From, say, a scientific view, what is death?
Yeah, scientifically, it's not like flipping a switch. It's more of a cascade, really.
Yeah.
We talk about clinical death. That's when the heart stops, breathing stops.
Okay,
But then there's biological death. That's when the cells themselves start shutting down because they're not getting oxygen.
I see.
And the marker doctors often use now, the really definitive one, is brain death. That means an irreversible loss of all brain functions, crucially, including consciousness.
Right.
And, it's interesting because our understanding of brain death, that itself has changed a lot over the years with better tech.
So that's the scientific breakdown. But what about philosophy? How do thinkers look at this end?
Philosophically, yeah, it's often framed as the end of your personal story, your narrative in this world.
Simple enough.
But yeah, behind that simplicity is this huge debate. If the story ends, what about the self? Your identity, does it just dissolve? Or does something persist? And a lot of philosophers think about how knowing life is finite actually shapes its meaning now. It makes you consider the value of this one life we have.
And then naturally there's the spiritual side, which often sees it completely differently.
Completely. Spiritually, for billions of people, it's not an endpoint at all. It's a transition. Like a doorway, maybe the start of another journey, perhaps even a bigger one.
Right.
And that view, it fundamentally changes how you look at life and, well, what you might think of as its limits.
That difference, the scientific stop versus a potential spiritual go-on, that's where it gets really fascinating. So back to the science for a moment. Consciousness. What happens there? Science it officially says we don't know, right?
That's the official line, yes. We don't know.
But there's some pretty compelling stuff, data, that kind of pushes against that unknowable label.
Absolutely. The standard view, based on neuroscience, is that consciousness is produced by the brain. Brain stops, consciousness stops. Simple as that.
Okay.
However, then you have thousands, literally thousands, of documented near-death experiences. NDEs.
Ah, yes, NDEs.
These are people who were clinically dead, heart stopped, maybe no measurable brain activity, sometimes for minutes, maybe even longer, and they're revived. And they report these incredibly vivid, really complex experiences.
And those experiences, they often share common themes, don't they? Across cultures even. Things like seeing a bright light.
Exactly. A bright light, overwhelming feelings of peace, of love, sometimes a life review, seeing their whole life flash before them.
Meeting loved ones who've passed.
Yes, sometimes even deceased relatives or beings of light. And occasionally they report details about things happening around them while they were dead that they couldn't possibly have known through normal senses things later verified.
That's the part that's hard to explain away.
Precisely. And that consistency, the shared features, that's what makes the scientific community, well, scratch its head a bit.
So what's the dominant scientific explanation for that?
The main theory is that NDEs are a product of the dying brain. Like, the brain's last hurrah. Maybe it's a flood of endorphins or other neurochemicals like DMT. Maybe it's related to oxygen deprivation triggering unusual brain activity. Essentially, the brain creating a kind of final, vivid hallucination as it shuts down.
A biological short circuit, basically.
Kind of, yeah. A biological explanation for what feels like a spiritual event.
But then there's the other side of the coin, the more challenging interpretation.
Indeed. The counter-argument focuses on the clarity, the lucidity of these experiences, especially those recorded during times when there's absolutely no detectable brain activity.
Right. If the brain isn't working, how can it form memories?
Exactly. If consciousness is only made by the brain, how can you have these clear, structured experiences and remember them when the brain is, medically speaking, offline?
So what does that suggest?
Well, it leads some researchers cautiously to wonder if consciousness might be able to exist, at least temporarily, separate from the brain. Or maybe the brain is more like a receiver or an antenna for consciousness rather than the generator.
Wow.
It's a big challenge to the standard materialist view that everything is just physical matter. It really pushes the boundaries.
Well, Pause and rethink things.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting gears a bit, maybe can't get to that sentence something more. What about philosophy? Questions have thinkers wrestled with for ages about what might be next.
Oh, philosophers have done this for millennia. Socrates speaking of the soul's journey, right between mind and thinkers, grappling with what it means to be finite.
Hmm.
One really powerful idea is this. If humans, everywhere throughout history, can even imagine an afterlife, does that tell us something? Does the capacity to conceive of it hint at some kind of innate knowledge or intuition that it's real?
It's not proof of something, but it's suggestive.
Exactly. It raises a deep question about our own minds. Since we use that analogy of birth, think about it. Before we're born, you have zero concept of this life, this reality.
No, no, no.
So what if this was another kind of transition into a totally different reality, a dimension we just can't perceive in here?
So death is but the doorway.
Potentially. Refers it completely, not an annihilation, but maybe transition into a new way of being.
That's a really compelling way to think about it. Spiritual, of course, was really gets reached by the beliefs. Beliefs really guide how people live.
No, definitely. The beliefs here are incredibly varied. The concepts tend to be continuations and forms. So, reincarnation, like Hinduism and Buddhism, the soul and end finds into new form.
And that's big one.
Intricately tied. Actions, the thoughts, fear, and intentions, and so forth. Directly to the circumstances of expression. It creates the professional focus on living ethically, on responsibility. It's not just a cyclical, it's a moral engine.
It's just for them.
Not at all. Then, think about the afterlife consensus in religions like Christianity and Islam. Then, hell, think something in between. These are just as abstract ideas. They're unseen places. Places of judgment, or reward, or ultimate union with the divine.
Providing from, but also more work.
Exactly. From hope, strong guide for conduct and just driven by seeking safety and consciousness. And you also have more difficulties.
Like,
Like the idea that the individual soul doesn't necessarily go to a place or into a new body, but instead just begins into some kind of greater universal consciousness. The drop of water returning to the ocean.
this is this.
Sort of, yes. A dissolution of the individual ego maybe, and becoming one with everything. It's insane in individuality, just continuing. So you see, one leading from paths, but all pointing beyond the clear physical end.
It's amazing that I'm not only thinking something more, despite the huge difference. When we know, can we ever be absolutely sure what happens?
No, maybe into a character, and maybe maybe unknowability is part of its mystery.
It's being.
Perhaps we can gather the sense we can ponder the whole we can resist this spiritual Falville remains shift the perspective. If we see notice this terrible forward as the next step, whatever that step might be.
Things.
If the perspective have it lives in the doubt, realization there, yeah, everything is taking us the next step might to be depressing, deeply motivated.
Like a wake-up call.
Exactly. But yes, a reminder to live fully, to love deeply, constantly. To really engage with the time we do have. Precious. It helps you focus on what truly matters. Constantly.
Everything gains with the countdown because you come up with physical brighter somehow. It is really insightful look at, of course, and one it makes you just the most of us. Brighter somehow.
Is the absolute on, or maybe the start of something incredible. Perhaps the most important believe whatever it is for you to be a better person today. Because you're maybe the start, and well, there's much distant friendly to believe that will be one death. But where are you? To be heavily persistent before.
The mystery remains. But maybe, like you said, maybe that's the whole point. That's to live more consciously, more meaningfully. The present. If you think there's something new, we hope you'll see it. Who knows? We make it one of the best ones.